Drinkers. I'm Kush,
And I'm Alex.
and today we're going to be reviewing AZD by Actress. So Actress is I believe British, I don't know if that's
Yeah,
right now, British
think he is.
techno IDM musician who's got some great reviews in the past, very popular for what he does. And this is his newest album that had I think a fair amount of anticipation amongst the IDM techno community.
Yeah, people really like Actress in general, really like his albums, so no difference here. So yeah, it's
Yeah,
because I never really listened to electronic music like this, but I thought this was a really interesting album personally, although in a very unique way, I'd say.
so for me, this album was, I think it was a good album. I'm not the biggest techno or IDM fan. Like I'm getting slowly into it. I like just today I listened to the new Information Flash album, which was another techno IDM album, and
Right.
and so this was one of my very few encounters with that genre. But I actually enjoyed. I think the second half, the everything besides like the first four or so songs and down were much better. I think the first four songs were kind of slow and repetitive, but the second, I guess half, let's call it half, was much more enjoyable than the first.
That's weird. Do you think it takes you a little while to get into albums sometimes, Kush? Sometimes on the album that was that we did last week. What was it? Took Goldfrapp. It took you 4 songs to get into it. Maybe it's just
Uh,
2 random cases, but do you think
I
you
don't know.
need
I
to
think
sink into it?
so. At least for this album, I listened to this album, I want to say 3 times before writing up my notes and reviewing it and whatnot.
Yeah,
I think the first 4 were just very more generic, more. There wasn't as many interesting things going on. Like if you get to the later songs, like Dancing in the Smoke is so non-linear. It's just random. It's glitchy. The beat gets out of hand, and the song is actually interesting,
yeah.
and it fits the length of the song too. And then there's Failure, or was it the one after that?
4 in Chrome.
Four in Chrome, and there's a glitchy
What a
electronic
crazy,
beats on top of the
crazy
grand.
song.
There's grand string sections. It's really interesting. But the first couple songs were very linear, very repetitive, very standard. It starts off slow. These repeating bass lines or these repeating electronic beats gradually get bigger and bigger and built on. But it wasn't something super interesting to me. The song Fantasynth, I swear to God, there's some sort of frog croak or something on there. It was really weird.
I didn't quite catch that, but from the title of that, I was hoping it'd be more of a fantasy-sounding synth sort of song, but isn't quite that. I find that these songs are weird because they're really repetitive but at the same time catchy, and it does sound like a good thing to listen to. But these songs are proving to be super unique because they often have beats and rhythms more prominent in the mix than the keyboard melodies, which I think is a quite unique way of making tracks, if you ask me.
I think my least favorite song on here had to be Untitled 7.
The
Just
first
because
real track.
yeah, just because it had a nice mix of string sections and electronic beats, and it created a nice soundscape, but it didn't really get anywhere. It just kind of progressed and then flatlined to me. It was like a plateau, and it didn't have a peak at any point. Like most of the song was just the same to me. But given that, it still had a really good soundscape to it.
Well, these songs, like I said earlier, are just very minimal in whatever key changes or small shifts in progression of sounds actually get added. In that regard, because it's so repetitive and minimal, I'd say it is quite unique to listen to it, but it did threaten to get boring to me, but I did enjoy the track despite it not going many places, I'd say.
Yeah, I really did enjoy most of this. So the song Cyn, C-Y-N,
Yeah,
it had some interesting vocal samples in there and the industrial grime texture to it. And it was interesting how they made the vocal sample the background and the instrumentation the foreground, as opposed to the opposite, what happens to a lot of these more electronic type songs.
Yeah.
And it had so much going on, so complex, that it was actually really like just interesting to like just try to pay attention and completely listen to on its own.
So the first great song on the album for me was X22 Ream. Maybe he's trying to be extreme, but I don't think it quite spells that out. It's a good upbeat way to start the song. Such great timing of the beats. It's easily something most rappers could rap over. And yeah, I just thought that was a really enjoyably catchy song. The beat was great and had like a really cool sweeping synth atmosphere towards the end. One of the best songs on the album.
For me, with that song, it had some really cool like natural sort, like not natural, but like real sound effects. There's like some wind whooshing in the background, and it sounded almost slightly angelic to a point, but then it changes up to like this more glitchy, like almost like imagine a spy movie where the guy is like hacking away at a computer. Like this would be the song that's playing in the background. And they had a really cool implementation of the bells, so that was probably one of my favorites on there, alongside most of the later half of the album.
So getting to the later half of the album now, well, just because I have the most to talk about for in Chrome, which is, it sounds like a weird glitchy film soundtrack. Like the contrast levels between the glitch and like, I don't know what you'd call it, maybe string section like you said earlier, but I mean, people have played around with glitch and classical combining together, but it's always interesting to hear it. The thing is, the two extremes don't really play off each other that much, though. They do feel like two different instrumental tracks getting played separately. Maybe mono would be better than stereo here, although I don't really know if that would make a difference. This is probably the least accessible.
I don't know much about that.
I don't know, but this is probably the least accessible song on here, and least easy to understand. I can't lie, even though I'm all for them in theory, the electronic bleeps and bloop glitches actually do start to hurt my ears slightly, and it's a bit too long at 6 minutes to not have anything truly interesting happen. Like, it's an interesting idea in practice, but I really wanted to love this song though. Experimenting around with like classical music, or whatever this is, it's something, I'm just saying, it's a pretty cool experiment that I'll never forget in my life. I can guarantee that. But I feel like it's undercooked and had a lot of unfulfilled potential to it in a way. I don't know.
That was probably the most experimental track on the album, and it just had so many things going on, so many unique styles. And I even wrote that it's super cool, but to a point it does become an earache at certain points of it, just because it's just so high frequency and high pitched.
I just didn't think the glitch and the classical elements actually did anything really interesting. They were just played side by side somewhat, except maybe the classical like died down a bit towards the end. It's interesting. No one's gonna say it's not interesting, but I don't know. I thought it was okay, I guess.
Yeah, the song "Runner" was kind of cool, and it did evolve. The repetitive lines did evolve to a certain amount, but it sounded a bit dated to me. Like, it sounded like something like in the 80s or 90s they would have put out. It was kind of weird, because like a lot of this is very non-linear, very progressive, very modern music, and that one song was just very dated.
Doing this show has revealed that my frame of reference with music is quite limited, because this is like the 5th review where I'm saying it reminds me of Depeche Mode, but that kind of goes in with you saying it feels a bit dated, because Depeche Mode tried their electronic phase. I mean, they're electronic most of their career. It's probably like the set of keyboard chords that they sound like they could be a more conventional mainstream song, except it just gets repeated over and over, that it isn't a normal song. Like, yes, you get instrumental loops in most songs, like most EDM songs, I'd say, maybe, but this is like repeated to the point of it being really weird, I'd say, some of these songs. I like it in the general practice of it, but I don't know, it is pretty, I just think a lot of this is really minimal.
I wrote in my notes that Alex is going to compare this to Depeche Mode.
Why? Was it predictable that much?
It was predictable, Alex. I know you too well now.
Oh, God. There's an Angel
So
in the Shower. There's another good track, I'd say.
yeah, that was pretty good. The one I wanted last to just touch on is Visa, the very last song.
Yeah.
It was such a letdown for a closing track, which I was surprised because all these tracks are very good. This song was just a bit of a letdown to me.
Why?
I don't know. It just seemed like it was rather accessible, probably the most accessible on this album.
I'd say
It's
this
kind
is
of
like the
upbeat,
most,
but
yeah, the
it
most
just didn't-
upbeat sounding song. Yeah.
It just didn't get anywhere for me. It just kind of like flatlined, like I said, like a lot of these tracks on this album.
Well, the point, because a lot of this repeats each other, yeah, saying it flatlines, it's kind of fitting because like they repeat so much, like that kind of sounds like that, especially the longer songs. Like, yes, he does add other elements. Beats come in very subtly, I must say, but you know, I'm not saying this is a lazy project by any means. There's some stuff here that I can't comprehend how he made, like 4 in Chrome, and I'd say some other ones as well, like X22 Ream. I don't know how to say that, but yeah, Visa. Had some really upbeat melodic glitches on it, almost like chiptune. I don't know if you got that.
Yeah,
But-
I heard that.
It strove to the whole atmosphere of positivity that I don't think most of this album has. I think a lot of this album's quite dark or whatever, and I like happy music. I like to be a happy guy, but yeah. So I didn't mind that. So yeah,
But yeah. What would you rate this album, Alex?
it was interesting. I've not heard many albums like this, so maybe some people would rate this lower, maybe some people would rate it higher if this is the pinnacle of the genre. IDM or micro house, which is like house music but very minimalized. It has a genre name. There's a genre for every small type of different thing. So I'm going to give it a 7, you know. The approach to making this is quite unique, and the way that they're so repetitive and dig into your skull, he creates some really clever sounds on here. More often than not, they work out reasonably well, and even when they don't, they're still at least interesting. Some of this is actually quite relaxing and meditative, and some of it is slightly oppressive and hard to get into. I feel like this is worth digging into if you're an electronic fan, definitely, of any type, because it's pretty good and evokes a lot of feelings without doing much itself, I'd say.
Yeah. So for me, this is a 6.5 album. It's good. Now, I know everyone in the comments gets mad when you give the album 6.5. They think it's bad.
I don't know.
Is a
There's
good
not much
album.
difference between. There's not much difference between that and a 7. I'd say 5.5 is still a sort of decent score. Like you're more on the positive end at 5.5.
Yeah. So it's still a good score. It's just there were a couple songs that I was not very interested by. It was a bit bland. But there were also some songs on the complete opposite spectrum that were just over the top, super experimental, super interesting, that kept me going for this album. And there are a lot of soundscapes, and I'm not gonna like sit here and criticize him because I don't know how hard it is to make an electronic song like this, especially how experimental he is in some of them. But to me personally, I just didn't enjoy listening to. Well, I mean, I enjoyed listening to it, but they were a bit bland on some songs. But overall, still a pretty solid album by Actress.
Yeah, we both enjoyed it, so nothing to complain about, Actress fans, is there?
We're still gonna get bad comments.
Yeah.
Well, if that's it, then thanks for tuning in to Busted Speakers. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you like and subscribe. Check us out on social media, and check out some of our other videos. We'll link them on the screen right now.